Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
After listening to today's news, you'll know, first, Google's AI sparks outrage by adding unauthorized charity logos to biased white savior images. So we'll discuss why this AI-driven trademark infringement creates a new legal minefield and what it means for AI safety guardrails. Second, China's Nvidia rival More Threads surges 400% in its $1.1 billion IPO despite facing crippling US sanctions. We'll analyse why US sanctions are paradoxically fueling a speculative boom for China's homegrown chip makers and how it could affect global semiconductor dynamics. Third, a Soilsmology breakthrough uses seismic waves and AI to map soil health, disrupting traditional agricultural science. Today we'll take a closer look at this technical breakthrough and its implications for fighting the global food crisis and managing agricultural data ownership. Fourth, the EU hits X with a €120 million fine under its new Digital Services Act, targeting deceptive blue checks. In this episode, we'll break down this first major DSA enforcement and what it signals for the EU's push for digital sovereignty over US tech platforms. Fifth, electric aircraft maker Beta Technologies reports a $452 million loss while positioning itself as the Nvidia of air taxis. This discussion will reveal how Beta's supplier strategy connects to a larger trend in platform ecosystems and what it means for the future of electric aviation. Google's new AI is doing something it was never asked to do, and it's dragging some of the world's biggest charities into a major controversy. The company's new image generator, Nano Banana Pro, was discovered to be automatically adding the official logos of charities like World Vision, Save the Children, and the Red Cross onto the clothing of people in its AI-generated images. The problem? Nobody asked it to, and the charities are furious. So how does this even happen? It isn't just a random glitch. AI models like this are trained on massive data sets of images from the internet. They learn to make connections. When the AI scrapes millions of images related to humanitarian aid, it sees these charity logos over and over again, learning to associate the concept of aid work with the visual of a charity logo. It's not thinking, it's just repeating a pattern, leading to this spontaneous and unauthorized use of real-world trademarks. This all started when researchers prompted the AI with simple phrases like, volunteer helps children in Africa. The results were consistently problematic. In dozens of tests, the AI almost exclusively generated images of a white woman surrounded by black children, often with stereotypical backdrops like grass-roofed huts. Researchers are calling it a clear case of white savior bias. And this bias doesn't come from nowhere. It's a direct reflection of the data the AI was trained on. If the model was fed decades of stock photos and news archives that overwhelmingly show white volunteers in Africa, then that is the reality it will reproduce. The AI is essentially holding up a mirror to our own historical biases, turning the old problem of poverty porn from curated photos into an infinite, on-demand supply of stereotypes. What really brought this to a head was the next development. The AI started adding real, trademarked logos to these images without authorization. In a direct statement, a spokesperson for World Vision confirmed, "We haven't been contacted by Google or Nano Banana Pro, nor have we given permission to use or manipulate our own logo or misrepresent our work in this way." The reaction from other organisations was even stronger. Kate Hewitt, the director of brand at Save the Children UK, stated that the images do not represent how they work and that they have serious concerns about the use of their intellectual property. This situation creates a massive legal minefield. The charities could potentially argue that Google's AI is causing trademark infringement or brand dilution by associating their trusted logos with harmful, stereotypical imagery. This is uncharted legal territory. We're already seeing similar fights, like Warner Brothers suing AI companies for generating images of its characters. This could set a huge precedent for who is liable when an AI goes rogue. So, what is the end game for Google as it faces this backlash? Believe it or not, this isn't an isolated incident. You might remember when Google's Gemini AI was criticized earlier this year for generating historically inaccurate images, like diverse groups of Nazi-era soldiers. It reveals a systemic weakness in Google's AI safety process. In trying to fix one type of bias, they seem to be inadvertently creating or exposing others. It's a guardrail paradox, and it shows just how hard it is to control these powerful new tools. The charities are not just concerned, they are signaling a potential fight. Save the Children's statement ends with a bombshell, declaring they are looking into what action they can take, and that they do not consider this AI content generation to be legitimate or lawful. Speaking of the global AI race, the competition isn't just in software and safety. It's a full-blown war over the hardware that powers it all. And in China, a company nicknamed China's Nvidia just had its stock price explode over 400% on its very first day of trading. The company, Threads, just pulled in a staggering $1.1 billion in its Shanghai IPO. The stock didn't just climb, it launched closing at over 5 times its initial price. Now get this, this incredible surge isn't actually based on current profits. In fact, Threads isn't profitable yet. Research shows the retail investor part of the IPO was oversubscribed more than 4,000 times. A while back, we talked about how compute scarcity was throttling even cloud growth inside China. Sanctions have amplified that scarcity, which helps explain why retail money is piling into anything that looks like domestic capacity. This suggests the massive valuation is being driven less by financial performance and more by a powerful wave of policy-driven optimism and national pride, a speculative bet on China's future tech independence. The most surprising part is why this is so shocking. Threads is under US sanctions specifically targeted to cripple its access to advanced chip technology. Interestingly enough, these sanctions, which were designed to hold back China's AI progress, have had a paradoxical effect. They've inadvertently created a huge protected domestic market. With Nvidia's best chips blocked, Chinese tech giants have no choice but to buy from domestic suppliers like Threads, essentially guaranteeing them customers and fueling these massive valuations. We previously analyzed how the big US clouds, Google, Amazon, even OpenAI are pouring billions into custom silicon to build second sources and sovereignty. The latest development is a sovereign version of that same playbook in China, except policies forcing it at warp speed. However, these sanctions do have teeth. On a technical level, because Threads is cut off from the world's top chip foundries, they have to use older, less efficient manufacturing processes. This means their engineers face the incredible challenge of designing chips that can compete on performance even when they are built with less advanced technology. And yet, it just had one of the most successful market debuts of the year. This isn't just one company getting rich, it's the front line of a global tech war. Beijing is in a full court press to achieve AI independence and break its reliance on the American chip giant Nvidia. Continuing our last discussion on how custom silicon has become the strategic weapon in the cloud wars, China is effectively scaling that logic to the national level. And breaking that reliance is about more than just building a faster chip. The real challenge, the mountain these companies have to climb, is software. Nvidia's dominance isn't just its hardware, it's a powerful software ecosystem called CUDA that has become the industry standard for AI development. It's the moat around Nvidia's castle. A while back, we also noted Nvidia's push to make its interconnect fabric NVLink the default glue inside AI data centers. That means Chinese companies like Threads aren't just building chips. They have to recreate a CUDA-class software stack and their own high-speed interconnect fabric to tie thousands of accelerators together. That is a monumental, full-stack task. The conflict is escalating. For years, Washington has blocked Nvidia from selling its most advanced chips to China. Now, Beijing is reportedly returning the favor, blocking Nvidia imports to carve out a protected market for its own domestic players. We previously highlighted how, in the West, even fierce rivals sometimes practice co-opetition by leaning on Nvidia's fabric. In China, that door is largely shut, which raises the bar for full independence but also concentrates demand on homegrown solutions. But this raises a critical strategic question. Is this let 100 flowers bloom approach of funding so many different competitors the most effective way to build a national champion? Some experts wonder if this strategy actually risks fragmenting talent, capital, and most importantly, the software ecosystem. Instead of creating one unified force to challenge Nvidia, it might create a scattered landscape of incompatible technologies that struggle to gain critical mass on their own. And as we've discussed before, the real battleground is the stack from frameworks to interconnects. So fragmentation here makes it even harder to counter Nvidia's unified standard. This billion-dollar IPO is more than just a stock pop. It's a loud and clear declaration in the high-stakes battle for AI supremacy. It shows that despite sanctions, China's strategy to build its own tech champions is not only funded, but it's accelerating. A while back, we said the AI hardware hierarchy was beginning to reshuffle. Today's debut is proof that a parallel sovereign hierarchy is forming at speed inside China. From the geopolitical battle for silicon supremacy, we now shift our focus to a technology tackling one of humanity's most basic challenges: food. As the global population explodes, crop yields in some regions are forecast to plummet by 50%. A top soil scientist has put it bluntly, stating, "If we do not do anything, we are looking at starvation." The problem is the very ground beneath our feet. 99% of all the calories we eat come from the soil, but for decades, assessing its health has meant digging countless holes, a slow, destructive, and inaccurate process. Now, a team of scientists is deploying a radical new solution, adapting the technology used to measure earthquakes to look underground. They call it Soilsmology. By simply hitting a metal plate on the ground with a hammer and measuring the seismic waves, they can create a fine-grained map of everything happening beneath the surface, from water levels to the tunnels made by earthworms. So the thing is, they're not just taking a picture. The seismic waves, their speed, their strength, their frequency are fed into sophisticated machine learning models. Think of it like an AI for soil. These models have been trained to connect those physical signals to specific biological and chemical properties, like how much carbon is stored in the soil or even the density of microbial life. It's translating the language of vibrations into the language of agriculture. And what they're finding is an absolute bombshell. The UK supposedly has the best soil map in the world. In one well-studied area, that map showed only 3 types of soil. This new technique found 18. In countries across Africa, the maps are even less reliable, leaving farmers blind to the problems right under their crops. This represents a huge leap past our current technologies. For years, we've relied on satellite images, which can be blocked by clouds and offer low resolution or expensive drones. Soilsmology offers a ground-level truth, a non-invasive way to get a high-resolution picture of the soil structure, something those other methods just can't see. This is where the situation takes a more complex turn. It can take 500 years for just 1 centimetre of soil to develop. That same soil can be washed away in a single afternoon. A Kenyan scientist called the new technology life-changing for local farmers who can finally see areas of compaction that cause flooding and prevent plant roots from growing. And life-changing isn't just about seeing the problem, it's about getting a solution. The system is being designed to do more than just generate a map. It will use AI to combine that soil data with local climate patterns and even information about what soil amendments like specific types of compost or cover crops are actually available and affordable in that specific region. It translates the raw data into hyper-localized, economically viable advice. This isn't just a research project. The non-profit, co-founded by Guardian columnist George Monbiot, aims to create a free app for farmers worldwide. This gets both incredibly exciting and complicated. The app may be free, but the hardware, the sensors called geophones that listen to the vibrations isn't. One of the biggest hurdles is figuring out how to get this physical equipment into the hands of millions of smallholder farmers in remote areas, affordably and sustainably. And here's another huge question. As they build this unprecedented global soil map, who owns that data? The non-profit has a massive responsibility to create a data governance model that protects farmers, ensuring this powerful information can't be used against them by large corporations or commodity traders. This gives them the power to pinpoint problems meter by meter, boosting yields and fighting a growing food crisis. Because without healthy soil, we run out of food. Speaking of data and who controls it, the European Union just made a very loud statement on that exact topic, dropping the hammer on Elon Musk's X with a massive 120 million euros fine. This isn't just a random penalty. Regulators got specific, breaking down the fine into 3 parts. First, a 45 million euros hit for what they called a deceptive blue tick verification system, arguing that allowing users to simply buy the checkmark undermines authenticity. The EU's core problem isn't just that the checkmark is for sale, it's that X allows anyone to buy it without robust identity verification. This blurs the line between a verified, trustworthy source and someone who just paid a few bucks. It essentially turns a symbol of authenticity into a potential tool for scammers and misinformation spreaders. This sets a dangerous precedent, and it puts other platforms like Meta, which also has a paid Meta verified program, on high alert to prove their systems are not misleading. Second, 35 million euros for a lack of advertising transparency. And finally, 40 million euros for failing to give researchers required access to public data. that 40 million euros fine for blocking researchers is particularly significant. X's policy changes have created what some are calling an academic blackout. This has effectively shut down crucial independent research into things like election interference, the spread of hate speech, and the activity of bot networks. Without this data, the public is flying blind and regulators can't get an independent view of the risks on the platform. The EU's Executive Vice President for Tech, Henna Virkkunen, delivered a blistering official statement saying, deceiving users with blue check marks, obscuring information on ads, and shutting out researchers have no place online in the EU. But that's not the whole picture. The real turning point is that this ruling is the very first major enforcement under the EU's powerful new Digital Services Act, a landmark law designed to regulate big tech. It sets a huge precedent for every major platform operating in Europe. The Digital Services Act, or DSA, you see, is not just another regulation. It's a fundamental shift in power. The DSA forces major platforms to be more transparent about their algorithms, to aggressively police illegal content, and, as we just saw, to provide data access to vetted researchers. It's the EU's attempt to write the rule book for the internet. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer of strategy at play. This is becoming a flashpoint in a larger economic and ideological conflict over something called digital sovereignty. The EU is making a strategic push to reduce its dependence on US-based tech giants and establish its own rules for the digital world. This isn't just about privacy, like with past GDPR fines. It's about the EU asserting control over its own digital economy and society. It's a high-stakes chess match for control of the internet's future. The stakes are enormous. Under the new law, X could eventually be fined up to 6% of its entire worldwide revenue. Now, you might hear 120 million euros and wonder if that's really enough to scare a company of this size. And that's a fair question. Historically, some fines against big tech have been seen as just the cost of doing business. For example, some past GDPR fines have amounted to less than 0.01% of a company's annual revenue. But the threat of a 6% fine is a different beast entirely. That would be a crippling penalty, potentially costing billions, and it shows the EU is willing to escalate if platforms don't fall in line. While Elon Musk can appeal the decision, the EU has fired the first major shot in a new era of tech regulation. This ruling signals a fundamental power struggle, with the European Union asserting its sovereign right to regulate the world's most powerful tech companies, no matter who owns them. While one tech giant is facing fines, another company in a totally different sector is burning through cash at an incredible rate, but for a very different reason. Electric aircraft maker Beta Technologies just reported a staggering net loss of $452 million in its first report since going public. Now, I know what you're thinking, but this isn't a sign of failure. Actually, this is the massive upfront cost of trying to invent the future. This cash burn is essentially the price of admission to the electric aviation revolution. We're talking about immense research and development expenses and the incredibly difficult process of getting an aircraft certified as safe. And here's the twist. In that same report, their revenue more than doubled. So what's the full story? This is the high-stakes, cash-burning world of electric air taxis, and a fierce battle for the future of flight is underway. Here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone is fighting this battle the same way. While rivals like Joby and Archer are going straight for the flying taxi dream, carrying passengers in cities, Beta is playing a different, more pragmatic game. They're starting with cargo and military contracts first. It's a less risky path, you know? Cargo doesn't complain, and military contracts provide steady income, allowing Beta to perfect its technology before ever putting a passenger inside. Backed by Amazon, Beta is in a ruthless race against rivals Joby Aviation and Archer Aviation. They are all vying for the golden ticket, approval from the Federal Aviation Administration to get their futuristic aircraft into commercial operation as soon as next year. And that golden ticket is the hardest part of this whole story. Getting FAA approval isn't just a bit of paperwork. It's a brutal, multi-stage process. The entire industry is wrestling with huge unknowns. How do you prove that massive battery packs won't fail catastrophically in midair? How do you certify brand new flight control software that has never existed before? These are the questions that keep engineers up at night, and solving them is where hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent. And while Beta is bleeding money, it's also making massive power moves. Aerospace giant GE Aerospace just agreed to invest $300 million into the company. This partnership isn't just about cash, it's a strategic military play. GE and Beta are co-developing a hybrid electric engine based on tech used in military helicopters like the Black Hawk. This partnership de-risks the whole venture by spreading out the enormous development costs and giving Beta access to proven military-grade technology. This comes as Beta's CEO, Kyle Clark, makes a bold claim to establish their dominance, stating, "We have flown more than twice as many miles than anybody else in this industry." If that was just the appetizer, the main course is just being served. In a stunning move, Beta just landed a massive supply deal, not with a customer, but with another air taxi company, Eve Air Mobility. This isn't just any partnership. The deal to purchase Beta's electric motors could be worth as much as $1 billion over the next 10 years. This is a stroke of genius, and here's why. Beta isn't just trying to build the best aircraft, it's trying to become the Nvidia of air taxis. Think about it. Nvidia doesn't make computers, it makes the powerful graphics cards that everyone else needs to build their computers. By selling its advanced electric motors to a competitor, Beta is positioning itself to be the essential component supplier for the entire industry. It's a brilliant hedge. Even if their own plane doesn't win the race, their technology could be powering the winner. That single agreement helped push Beta's component backlog to over $1 billion, signaling that while the short-term losses are steep, major players are betting big on their technology to win the race for the skies.
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.